There are nearly 7,800 convicted sex offenders in Kentucky living as free men and women, with a catch. Their crimes range from rape and incest to having a consensual sexual relationship with an underage person. Some are pedophiles, many aren't. They're all listed on the Kentucky State Police's online sex offender registry. And regardless of their crime and the fact they've done their time, they have this in common too. The way people feel about having them as neighbors.
I don't like it at all.
Samerica Ellington lives on Osage Court in Lexington. According to the registry, so do 4 convicted sex offenders. There'd be more if the Catholic Action Center had gone through with an attempt to buy this condo in which 3 would live and pay rent.
We didn't go through with the purchase of it because it was obvious the neighborhood was very upset and also was very threatening to the men we would have been moving in there.
She says rocks were thrown at the apartment's windows and the men themselves. The Catholic Action Center has been more successful elsewhere, though early this year, residents of Detroit Avenue in Lexington helped stop a similar attempt before anyone moved in. Of course, sex offenders likely don't choose to live together in the first place. In July of 2006, state lawmakers passed a tougher Megan's Law that made it illegal for most sex offenders to live within 1,000 feet of a school, public park, or daycare center. Thus, clusters of them in the few places where they're allowed to live. But that's about to change. Last month, the state Supreme Court declared that law unconstitutional. State Attorney General and Senate candidate Jack Conway is preparing an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, which may not hear the case. Is it fair or perhaps even constitutional to apply what some would consider extra penalties or burdens after a conviction?
Well, I think there's a difference between a penalty and a burden, and it's a balancing test. And you have to balance the additional burden to someone who's committed a sex offense and who may, because of the nature of the offense, pose a continuing threat to society versus the needs of society.
3 days after Conway spoke to ABC 36 News, the state Supreme Court refused to say its decision while he appealed it. So sex offenders convicted before the summer of '06 can live wherever they're able. That's just fine with Jenny Ramsey. She says this map in her office, illustrating where sex offenders could not live before the October 1st ruling, shows why the residency requirements sometimes make it harder to keep track of them.
You can't do that if they're homeless. And you can't do that by marginalizing them to certain areas of town, is what happened. The low-income areas of town are all taken up.
So now, with more places to live, the clusters of sex offenders seem likely to break apart. And, ironically, leave more people saying, not in my neighborhood. Where should they live?
Somewhere far from where kids are. That's all I know.